Hey guys, my name is Oxy, and today we're going to be taking a look at Titan movement in depth. Now, Titan has a lot of interesting movement options, but I find a lot of people don't really take full advantage of them, and they don't really understand how to properly use the Titan jump beyond your basic Titan skates and your basic shoulder charge. So we're going to be looking at all of that today. And before we get started, I do want to mention that this is part 3 of a 3-part series where I cover all the different classes movements in Destiny. So if you're interested in Hunter or Warlock movement, you can go ahead and check those out as well. I'll have those links in the description. But starting off, we're going to talk about mobility, just to start as a base. Now, mobility does not affect your sprint speed. I'm going to say it again, mobility does not affect your sprint speed. This is a common misconception that a lot of new players have, but it does not in any way affect how fast you run. What it does affect is how fast you strafe, so while you're aiming down sights like this, if you're in a gunfight, or just your basic walk strafe speed. And then it also affects your initial jump height. So that is this jump right there before you do any glides or special stuff. It does not directly affect your glide height. However, because your glides go off your first jump, it will indirectly affect that as well. But that's all that mobility affects, so a lot less than people think. Now you might be asking, how can I buff my sprint speed if I can't do it with mobility? It's a good question. Every class in the game has access to a set of exotic legs that will buff their sprint speed. Now for Titan, it's the DUNEMARCHERS, and on all classes, their pair of legs will buff their sprint speed and their slides. Now, on the DUNEMARCHERS, it doesn't actually say it buffs the slides, but it does buff the slide, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then on top of that, each class gets a special ability. For Titans, the ability is the static charge melee attack ability, but we're not going to cover that today since we're just concerned with movement. So when I put these legs on, I am automatically moving a little bit faster than default. Now, something you have to keep in mind is that sprint speed buffs will cap at 2. You can only have 2 stacked at once. So right now I am a little bit faster than normal, and then if I add another sprint speed buff, like a lightweight weapon here, which increases my sprint speed, I am now moving as fast as you can move with a sprint. I can't go any faster than this, and for Titan at least there isn't really anything you can do to try and stack faster than this, which is fine. Now just to cover the slides real quick, I want to show you the distance, so I'm going to slide when I hit right here. And you see we got about here. I'm going to say this line because I slid a little bit early. Yeah, it's more like right there. Now I'm going to take them off and show you a normal slide distance. Sliding at the same spot, and I got caught on the wall there. Not having good slides today, but that's about the distance of a normal slide. So the sprint buff slide went all the way to there. Normal slide goes about to here. So that's roughly the extra distance you're getting with the DUNEMARCHERS. Now, interestingly enough, Titan actually has a few more exotic legs that buff mobility. One of them is the Antaeus wards, and these, they're kind of interesting because they don't buff your sprint speed, but they do give you the better slide. And as you can see here, your slide is about the same distance as the DUNEMARCHERS as well. So yeah, that was a good one, and I got basically to the same line here. So even though you're not getting the sprint speed buff, slide for slide, you're getting the same amount of speed and distance as you would with the DUNEMARCHERS, which is pretty cool. And then you can use, like a lightweight weapon, and you're almost the same level of speed, just not quite there. Another interesting exotic that Titan has that buffs movement is the Lion Rampant. Now we're going to go over this in a lot of detail a little bit later, but basically, what you need to know is that this allows you to hip fire accurately while you're in the air, while you're gliding, and normally you wouldn't be able to do that. And then it also just extends your glide duration and control while in the air. And again, we're going to go over this in a little bit more detail later because there's a lot of cool advanced stuff you can do with this, and we're going to cover that when we go over all the glides. Real quick, before we get into the gliding and all the other fun advanced stuff, I just want to cover barricade slides. So if you watch the Warlock guide, you watch the rifts, you know what this is about. When I'm sliding, I cannot place down a barricade. As you can see there, I was trying to place it. It says no, I'm not allowed to. Now it's on cooldown, obviously. But you cannot place a barricade while sliding. You have to be stationary. However, if I press the barricade button while I'm sprinting without trying to slide, it'll put me into a little impromptu slide animation on the fly. So that's how you get a barricade slide out. Very useful to know if you're trying to get around cover. I generally like to use it when I'm approaching a corner. So like if I know a sniper is up there watching the corner and I want to get an angle, I'll use it so I can slide out, and now I've gotten the barrier pushed out just in time so I can peek the sniper safely and see where he is, and the barricade's protecting me. Okay, next we're going to go over jumps. The first jump we're going to cover is the high lift. This gives you the most height out of all the Titan lifts, and unfortunately, in my opinion, it is the worst one. You can see it's very slow going up. It doesn't give you a whole lot of airtime in the air, and generally you don't want to be going like really high in Destiny, especially in PvP. You kind of want to stay low to the ground so you're maneuverable, and this lift just, it doesn't cut it. It's very slow, it leaves you open, and it's not great. The only time I put this on is if I'm trying to do some kind of weird jumping puzzle skip where I really need to get up high. Like if I was trying to really get up high and land on this edge here or something, then I might equip it. But other than that, I pretty much never use the high lift. Next we have strafe lift, and this gives you the most directional control. And unfortunately for Titan, that's not a lot, because Titan pretty much has the least amount of in-air control of all the classes. So you can kind of see, I think about Titan as like a warship. Once you get going in a certain direction in mid-air, you're going pretty fast, and there's not much that can stop you. But once you get going in a certain direction, it's also very hard to change your direction. So you can get a bit of control here, but just like the other ones, it's not the greatest as far as aerial control. Now, something interesting that you can do with strafe lift is you can skate basically just a couple inches off the ground if you jump into the air and then activate your lift as you're falling. So, kind of looks something like this. And you can see I'm just going perfectly flat, straight forward, which is, I don't know, it's kind of cool. It feels like you're roller skating a little bit, and it's pretty speedy. But other than that, it's not that crazy. Now, the one instance where I could think of maybe using it is if you have Peregrine Greaves and you want to sort of be floating around just off the ground so that if you do need to shoulder charge something, you instantly have the enhanced damage. But you also want to stay very low to the ground so you're not exposed in midair. The one other thing you can kind of do is you can use the Lion Rampant because they extend your airtime, and so using the Lion Rampant, you can stay in the air for a long time, just cruising like that. And it's actually pretty fast. So if you're on controller, this is one option I'd recommend because it lets you get around pretty quickly without having to do a traditional Titan skate, which is very hard to do properly on a controller. Last and definitely not least, we have the catapult lift. And this has the initial burst of momentum. And in my opinion, this is the best jump for Titan. You can see it goes pretty high. You do not stay in the air very long at all. You spend the least amount of time in the air, which is the main weakness of this jump. One thing I want to point out is that you have much more upward thrust on your initial glide than you do for, say, the high lift. So for example, just go back to high lift to show you. High lift goes up very slow. You can see it doesn't really accelerate too fast. Whereas with catapult lift, it kind of gives you a nice little boost of speed, almost as if you have like a jetpack and you just turned it on. And that's the main strength of this jump, because if we're talking height, high lift wins in the end as far as overall jump height. But this lift, catapult lift, gives you the best initial height. So if you're trying to quickly get over a wall or something like that, catapult lift is your friend there. And of course, it's also the fastest. Now, a lot of people struggle with this lift, and they struggle to cover distance with it. And I found that the best way to cover distance with the catapult lift is to just feather your jump. If you go all in on the jump and you just try to hold it out, like I'll jump from right here, it's okay, but I completely fall short of the awning there. Now, if I feather it like that, I get enough distance in order to cross the gap. So when I'm using this jump and I'm going for distance, I kind of tend to think about it as a hunter triple jump, where you jump once, you have your second little boost, your third little boost, and then you have a tiny little bit at the end to give you an extra bit of distance, but you don't get any height out of it. So you can see you get two upward boosts, where even if you're falling down, the jump will still push you back up in the air. And that's a very useful trick to be able to have. And then of course, if you want to go for raw height, you can just hold it out. All right, now that we have the basics of all the lifts down, I'm going to show you some Titan skating. Now, unlike Warlock skating, Titan skating is pretty simple. And basically what it boils down to is binding your jump to something you can spam really fast. So if I'm on mouse and keyboard, I have it on my scroll wheel, just like Warlock skating. And then you just gently scroll your wheel and try and spam as many inputs as fast as possible. Like so, and it'll get you going pretty fast. Now, unfortunately, this is really not that easy to pull off on controller, which is why I recommend the strafe lift where you're hovering just above the ground as an alternative. And if you're doing the scroll wheel method, it's going to work best with catapult lift for that initial burst. Now, if you are on controller and you don't want to use strafe lift, your best bet is going to be quickly canceling your catapult burst like this. And it's unfortunately not going to be as fast as the mouse scroll wheel technique, but it'll be something, at least. It'll be something to get you going just a little bit faster than normal. But again, it's unfortunately not going to be quite as possible on a controller as it is on a mouse, unlike the Warlock skate. At this point, I want to talk about what is probably one of the coolest movement options that Titans have, and that is sword flying. So in order to perform sword flying, you need to have the line rampants, you need to have catapult lift, and basically any sword. You don't have to have any kind of special exotic sword, just any normal sword that has ammo will do. And the way you do this is you're going to use the lift from the line rampants. Now the line rampants, there's a lot of cool stuff with these boots. In addition to giving you a ton of airtime, you can see they've got those jets there. And those jets have a lot more upwards oomph to them. So this combined with the fact that you get more airtime means you can use a sword swipe to essentially reset the boost meter on the line rampants and fly around pretty much indefinitely. So the way you do this is there's a very specific rhythm to it. You don't want to go too fast. You're going to jump, glide, cancel, jump, cancel, just like this. Boom. Get that rhythm down. And then after each glide burst, you're going to add a sword swing, but you're going to wait like half a second after the burst. You don't want to go right away. This isn't Warlock sword skating. This is a completely different kind of rhythm. So just a slight second after you do the burst, you're going to do a light attack. And then a slight second after that light attack, you're going to do another burst and chain them. And it looks like this. And there you go. I literally flew around the entire map and landed back on the exact same platform that I started on. Now, depending on your timing, you may lose a tiny little bit of height each time. You saw it was kind of a little bit low coming in, but it was still fine to make it. It is hard to, you can't go up with this at all. You basically stay on the same flat track or you go lower. You can maybe kind of correct yourself upwards a little bit if you get the timing just right, but it takes a lot of time. But basically, as long as you have the sword ammo and you have the space to go, you can go pretty much wherever you want with this. And I use this all the time, mostly in PvE, to just cross giant gaps that I don't want to deal with. It's very good in the Whisper mission. I also use it to skip backwards from the Morgeth encounter in Last Wish Raid to get the chest. And it's just very fun and effective all around to go flying around the map with this. Alright, next we're going to cover one of the main movement tools in the Titans kit, and that is the shoulder charge. Now, every subclass has access to a shoulder charge, so it's very useful to learn how to use the shoulder charge to your advantage. For those that don't know, you build up a sprint, and when you see that whooshing effect at the side of your screen, you can do the shoulder charge. Now, what makes the shoulder charge so useful as a movement tool is that if you don't hit anyone, the ability does not go on cooldown. As you can see there, it just comes right back right away. There's no cooldown to using this just for movement, so you can use it quite frequently. The other cool thing about shoulder charge is that it, of course, works in mid-air just as well as it does on the ground. Now, when you're using it in mid-air, and technically on the ground as well, it's probably one of the best ways to change your movement in mid-air. Because remember, it's very hard to change direction as a Titan in mid-air. That was me trying to go to the right. But let's say I use my shoulder charge, and I make the turn very easily. And of course you can go straight backwards as well if you want. So this is one of the main things that makes shoulder charge very powerful. Now there's a certain technique you can use with shoulder charge on the ground that is very important to learn. And that is the fact that you can still shoulder charge out of a slide, because a slide still counts as a sprint if you sprinted going into it. So like that, I can still slide. I can still slide. And the really cool thing about this is that you can actually fire your gun during your slide and still come out of the slide with a shoulder charge. Like so. And the reason this is special is because you can't shoulder charge unless you're sprinting, and you normally can't fire while you're sprinting as well. So if I shoot, it stops, and then I'm not sprinting, so I can't shoulder charge. Once again, and I can't shoulder charge. It's just a normal melee. But if I slide, I get the shoulder charge. Now, the main reason this is useful is because this allows you to use your shoulder charge sort of as a dodge, a hunter dodge, to get back into cover. Now remember, when you're using the hunter dodge, it's ideal to slide out, take your shot, and then dodge back into cover like so. If I was a hunter, that would have been a dodge. Now, Titans don't have a dodge, but they do have the shoulder charge, and maybe you can see where this is going. We can slide, take our shot, and then, whoop, I messed that up. He would have been dead. But if you're fast enough, you can flick your aim back and get back into cover like there. So just imagine I'm peeking this corner with a shotgun instead of a sniper. Take my shot, and then I'm immediately back into cover like that. And this is a bit hard to do because you have to be really quick with hitting that 90-degree turn and then hitting another 90-degree turn back to the way you were going in order to get back into cover. But it is very, very useful to do. Unfortunately, this is not viable in air because as soon as you fire the shot, it stops you from sprinting. You don't have the slide to keep your momentum going from the sprint so that you can keep your shoulder charge running. One thing I forgot to mention, by the way, about using the shoulder charge to slide peek is that if you have on the DUNEMARCHERS or the Swords or anything that buffs your slide, because you have the greater slide distance, it's a lot easier to pull this off since you're sliding for longer. So if you're going to try and incorporate this into your play regularly, I would recommend checking out either of those legs in order to give yourself a bit of leeway while you're learning the move. And maybe even just keep them on while you're playing, because they're both very good legs to have. Now there is an aerial-based shoulder charge of sorts, and this is the Ballistic Slam. It only appears on the Middle Tree Striker class. And this, it's kind of a weird ability because it's a shoulder charge, but it's a shoulder charge that you can only activate in mid-air. As you can see, the sprinting effect only shows up when I'm in the middle of a jump. And unlike the other shoulder charges as well, this ability is consumed when you use it and don't hit an enemy. So unfortunately, this means that it's not quite as flexible as a shoulder charge for moving around the map. But the nice thing about it is it does give you way, way, way more distance than a normal shoulder charge would if you use it properly. As you can see, I can basically go anywhere I want to as long as I have enough height. Now, something to keep in mind with this is it is a bit momentum based. So if I try to go the exact opposite direction of where I'm facing, I'll basically just go straight down even if I'm aiming myself somewhere else. But as long as you're going forward or off to the sides, let's try like a straight 90-degree turn. You should be pretty good. Just don't try to go against your own momentum. And of course, the last thing to mention with this is that you can combo the Ballistic Slam into your super. And one of the cool things about this is not only does it give you an insane amount of distance, you can see I can cover like the entire map there. But you'll also notice it didn't actually consume my Ballistic Slam because the Ballistic Slam isn't consumed until you hit the ground. So obviously in a real match I wouldn't be able to just combo supers back to back like that, but it allows you to keep your Ballistic Slam for after your super if you so choose. Alright, speaking of supers, we're going to take a look at some of the activation criteria for Titan supers because they're kind of interesting. So there's two supers that you can activate with a slide and retain momentum, and the first one is Burning Maul. As you can see there, I kind of slid forward while activating the super. And the second one, pretty much the same thing, just slightly different, is the Fists of Havoc, which of course has the cool fist slam attack animation, which is pretty cool. Now, unfortunately, these are the only two supers that the Titan class has that can do that. But that's not all we got, luckily. Other supers, like the hammers, which don't proc off of a slide, can still maintain a little bit of momentum when you're in the air, like so. Boom. And you can see I floated around very nicely. And if you're playing one of these supers that also happens to have a shoulder charge, you can use the shoulder charge basically as an aerial slide, and you'll retain momentum through that as well. So boom, and I get to go a little bit farther, like if I'm trying to get out or if I'm trying to get in the cover, what have you. Now, unfortunately, the shoulder charge technique does not really work on the ground. As soon as you throw the shoulder charge out and pop your super, all the momentum will be halted. So you can see right there, it just stopped me in place. This also applies to the Sentinel super. Alright, now going back to Burning Maul for a second, Bungie recently changed the super so that you can chain your light attack indefinitely, which is pretty fun. You can just spin to win your way around the map, all Legend of Zelda style. But one thing to keep in mind with the spin attack is that it will still finish the chain if you spin attack off a surface like that. So if you spin attack off a ledge into the air, it'll end your chain. So you can be going fine anywhere, going uphill, you're good, but as soon as you go off an edge, it will end your chain. And this can be a little bit annoying, especially in an area, you know, like here with Twilight Gap, where there's a lot of uneven ground, because you might go off a tiny little edge that doesn't even look like an edge, and it will end your attack. So keep that in mind as you're zipping around here. You can see even those little dips and indentations in the ground do end the chain. Moving on to Fists of Havoc, I do want to remind you guys that you have a shoulder charge in your Fists of Havoc, even if you're using bottom tree, and all the same rules with shoulder charge apply. You can use your slides, mix up your movement like so. It's a very useful tip for covering ground. One thing I do want to point out is that when you're using your Fists of Havoc with the slam consumes super energy when it hits the ground. So what this means is that if you want to try and get a last bit of distance out of the end of your super, you can combo a shoulder charge into a slam, even if you don't have a ton of energy, because the cost is taken when I hit the ground. So even if I only have a sliver of my super energy bar left at the end, it still doesn't matter. I'll do the full slam because I get the cost at the end. Alright, last but not least, I want to talk about the Sentinel super, and this is a good super to practice with because all three trees basically have the same movement and the same options because the super is very, very similar. So when you're in your Sentinel super, you're going to have a 3-hit bash combo that you see there. But if you go into the air, it turns into a 2-hit bash combo and skips that first attack. You can see he swipes from the left, and then in the air he just goes straight to the right. So there's two different combos, grounded and air, and that's going to be important in a second. Now, one thing you can do is something called bash skating, and it's basically jumping into an aerial light over and over and over. So jump, 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 like so. And you can cover a lot of ground very quickly that way, but it also takes your super away a lot faster. So it's one of those things where it's kind of up to you whether or not you want to do it. Keep in mind, these combos, you can change direction every single time. So I can go 1, 2, 3, and mix it up. I can go 1, 2, 3. Now the last thing to keep in mind with the Sentinel super, because it has so many attacks, is the best way to get animation strings, especially with the shield throw. Now for the shield bashes, it's kind of obvious. They kind of just do it for you. But with the shield throw, it combos better with certain bashes than others. So going off the first bash on the ground, it combos pretty well. The first ground bash, it combos pretty well. The shield comes out pretty fast. The final bash, the sort of shoulder charge bash, it does not combo very well with. You can see there's a lot of lag there. And that's the same regardless of whether you're doing that or the grounded one. There's a lot of lag at the end, so I would not advise trying to throw a shield at the end of a combo chain. But the best one actually is the second one, second in the grounded chain or first in the aerial chain. So this one where he swipes from the right. You can see it almost looks like it's actually meant to be done like that because he basically continues his momentum and that little spin around. And that is by far the best one to do. And luckily, that combo's the best with, in general, what you would want to do. Because remember, this is the first aerial dash, and this is what you kind of want to be doing for your bash skating around. So you could be skating around, see someone, and immediately combo straight into the shield throw, which is very, very nice. One other thing to keep in mind is that it combos pretty well out of a guard, but the guard does not combo well at the end of an attack string. So guard, anything combos out of guard pretty well, but comboing into a guard is not very good. So if you're planning on doing a little attack strain and then guarding, not ideal. You kind of want to use the guard to approach and then go into your attack string at the end of that. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys. Titan has some really cool movement in my opinion, but it takes a bit of finesse to learn it. I think a lot of people underestimate how much skill there is involved with Titan movement beyond just your basic shoulder charge and Titan skating. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos. Once again, this is part of a 3-part series, so if you enjoyed this or learned something and you want to see the same thing done with Warlock and Hunter, I already have those videos out, and you can check out those links either in the description or at the end of this video. Once again, my name is Oxy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.